All right. Welcome back to the Crucial Combo Podcast. You are here with your gracious host, Kojo Afriye, and I have a special guest tonight I'm excited to talk to, Miss Narda Morant, running for mayor of East Orange. How are you this evening?
I'm doing just fine, feeling great.
I've been looking forward to talking to you for the past few weeks, and yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it. So you're running for mayor of East Orange. So I'm a proud resident of East Orange, New Jersey, and I've been here. And my wife and I have been here. We bought a house about 6 years ago. So we love East Orange, and So tell the people a little bit about yourself. I do see that you've been a longtime resident of East Orange, and
Sure. Like yourself, I do love East Orange. Right after college in New York, Prudential relocated me to East Orange, actually New Jersey. And a family friend who was a realtor at the time found me an apartment on Halsted Street in East Orange. And I never left East Orange. I came as an investment banker because prior to starting with Prudential, the summer of my senior year, I came over as an internship in the Sponsors for Educational Opportunity
okay,
program. And it was a program designed to have minorities who would not otherwise be exposed to fast track top flight positions in investment banking, that whole world. So I
hmm
wrote my essay and I got accepted on the strength of my essay. And about 2 weeks after I started interning that summer, the then CEO, Homer K. Reese, sent him a message for me to come up to his office. And I'm thinking, what did I do wrong now? But it was certainly good news. He had not monitored, but saw my work ethic and pretty much wanted me to join the team after college. So he extended an invitation,
okay.
a job offer. So I went back that summer back to college to finish up, knowing I had a secured investment position with Prudential down at Gateway in
Okay.
Newark. So that's how I ended up in New Jersey.
Nice. Okay, so you have investment banking background, and I know from your bio, you're a woman of many things. You've done many things. So I won't cut you off, but I know I want to tell people about your amazing restaurant I haven't visited yet, and you've also have been teaching in the school district for a long time. So please
Yes.
keep going. I don't want to
So,
stop you.
so my first restaurant was 2 years after I started working at Prudential. I, by nature, am very resolved about standards, accountability, but at the same time, it has to be balanced with a kind of personality and an environment that allows me to just be my authentic self. And I didn't feel that it was a perfect fit after 2 years being an investment banker. And so I pretty much looked up to the heavens. I says, Lord, I love people and I love to cook. Get me out of here. And within a year, I opened my first restaurant in East Orange. Yeah, that was 35 years ago. It was called Narda's Restaurant.
Wow.
It was on South Harrison Street between Freeway Drive and Central Avenue across from Black United Fund. Currently,
hmm
it used to be a professional building. It's now called Indigo. They've renovated it and it's now an apartment complex. But I will tell you, it was
hmm
a destination restaurant. I'm an avid tennis player. I would have friends coming over from Court 5 in South Orange. And they would sort of like mock because back in the 90s, whether you know it or not, because you like you said, you've only been in East Orange over 6 years, but back then, 30 something years ago, South Harrison Street was really riddled with a lot of drugs. Berwyn Street, all that area, it was certainly a place where you sort of tread lightly, and it was also at the time
hmm
of a recession. And folks at the time wondered, how can you enter a new market, especially an industry where the failure rate is so high, in the middle of a recession? But I survived and discovered in that space a beverage called Narda's Ginger Punch, which I started developing. Sold the business back in 1997, and a year later, 2 years later, went into
Okay.
teaching. But I still picked up the beverage business, and I still have some retail and some wholesale customers. So yes, I wear many hats.
Okay.
I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think serial entrepreneurs are by far to me the best and most well-rounded. This interview isn't about me, but I've done many things too, so I won't talk about it. But I understand where you're coming from, and I just admire it. Now going from in an investment banking is funny. I started out in investment banking in my early 20s too. So I understand that, you learn a lot as far as the background and the foundation. And you're exposed to a lot of things. I also worked for an investment bank during college and into my 20s, like I said. But yeah, you often want to get out and go into other things because it becomes kind of a little bit mundane. But, I'm sure you took a lot with you from that. When you transitioned from uh, from the restaurant and then got into teaching. Now that's, I'd say first of all, East Orange. I've been pleased thus far with education. I have some other questions to ask you about the district because my kids go to school in the district, but so far my wife and I have been very pleased. But what was your experience going from, the restaurant and then into teaching? What was the motivation for that?
Again, it was a kind of epiphany and a calling, really was, because I never dreamt of being a teacher, but I was at a critical juncture, uh, wanting to do something different, but not knowing what it was. And here it is again. And I don't say this glibly. I looked up to the heavens. I said, Lord, what's next? What do you want me to do? And so there were a series of dreams and kids running around and books, and I wasn't really in a good place because I wanted an answer. And I got frustrated. Like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to write books? I'm not an author. What are you doing with my life? I was sort of angry, you know. But lo and behold, a year later, I found myself in my first classroom, and these were the days before smart boards. So I was at the board with a chalk, and I had a scene play out with
Right.
a couple students. And I go, wait a minute, this is exactly the vision I had. Oh, this is what it is. I'm walking in this vision. And I will tell you, it's been 26 good years. I share with my colleagues and students. I said, listen, I could count on one hand, and that's not a hyperbole. I can count on one hand the times that I just really felt, oh, what did I get myself in? Outside of those five
Mm,
occasions, I've had a wonderful experience because the skill set and some of the intrinsic values, my work ethic that I've brought to the game in education has afforded me to sort of, in a very comprehensive way, meet the needs of families. So just not the academic part, the social part. I have spawned so many social programs. The list goes on,
hmm
just because of that intrinsic value of community, the intrinsic value of accountability. I grew up in the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica. I arrived in the United States when I was 14 years old, and at that time, I had completed my third year of high school. So I completed my 11th and 12th grade at Harry S. Truman in the Bronx, and went on to college in
Oh
Manhattan.
wow. Okay.
And I try to implore my students, I said, listen, the market is shrinking. You are competing for jobs that are not yet created. You are competing
So
against your
true.
neighbor across town and up the hill and different zip codes. And the A that you think you're getting, the grade A that you think you're getting and feeling comfortable about it, it's not really a grade A because there are kids younger than you are who are doing 10 times more and are pushing themselves. So I always tell my students, push
Hmm
yourself harder. Okay? Separate yourselves. Be the leader of the pack and don't settle for mediocrity.
Yeah.
And I try to pass on those standards, the very standards of excellence that my teachers held me to and all my, classmates. So yes, I bring some
hmm
sense of urgency to education, having been, a teacher in the district for 26 years, having, accomplished certain things, including a two-time governor teachers award.
Yeah, I
So
saw that.
yeah,
Yeah. That's incredible. And that's the sense of urgency in education. I'm glad you said that because it's so important. It's so important at this point now, like you said, because with the changes in the world, just in general, AI and the way the job market is changing, the skill sets students have to have, it's definitely a time for urgency, especially in our community. You know, now
absolutely.
now what grade have you always taught? I know we were talking before offline. You said you had taught teaching seventh grade. Has it always been junior high?
No, not at all. Out of my 26 years, this is my first year teaching middle school. I've been a K through
Okay,
8 teacher for, out of my 26 years, I'd say about um, 14 of those years. And the last 11 years, I was a math coach. And then when we had
okay,
that debacle, I call it a debacle, with the teachers being laid off and the budget cuts in our district, I had the opportunity to decide if I wanted to return as a coach or be back in the classroom. And I opted for the classroom, and I really feel happy
okay.
about that because the young folks that I'm interacting with, they are a joy. And it's not to say that I did not interact with middle schoolers before. There's a program that I wrote and got funded through the Bass Foundation to assist middle schoolers and high schoolers to close the learning gap. And we kicked it off at the Black United Fund, which is the old Vanderbilt Mansion on South Harrison Street, back in
Yeah.
2019, right
Okay.
before COVID. And I went to
Mm-hmm.
schools, middle schools, and asked for those kids that were in the bubble. And to this day, there's one young lady that works part time at my business, and she's now second year college. But she was one of the ones I recruited in sixth grade. So there are
That's
success
awesome.
stories of going outside and getting organizations to fund initiatives like the ones that I've talked about to help our young people in the city of East Orange.
Well, and you brushed upon a topic that I wanted to ask you about. The debacle that happened last year. Now that did make the news, and a lot of people were asking me about it, and it was kind of unclear as to what happened. My understanding was that the district did not receive the same funding, or East Orange did not receive the same funding as the surrounding towns. So, from your understanding, is it something that the school district needs to work on as far as was it a issue of mismanagement of funds, or was it more about the fact that the state just did not distribute the funds to East Orange as much as it did to Newark and Irvington and Orange?
Well, it's a combination, to my understanding, a combination of things. One of which, of course, we saw in subsequent months, as recent as about 2 months ago, the state actually did step up funding and granted
Yeah.
us, in the millions. So that's number one. Number two,
Mhm.
there was certainly someone asleep at the helm because teachers got letters, social workers got letters back in June of the same year saying that, we're going to let you go. And then they were sort of brought back in September just to be let go again.
Mhm.
The funding, part of the funding, especially for the social workers, to my understanding, there was a budget item that had and grant that was long since expired, but the district was carrying that. And of course, when you're getting shortfalls in funding and there's a shortfall in cash flow and you're not getting the monies from the city, the mayor's end of the formula, then you start to have to look at programs that you have to cut in jobs, especially if they were never really technically line items. So that's
Right.
sort of explains why some of the social workers were let go. But, I still say that proper management of resources should mitigate some of the needs that we have. I don't necessarily think that we are running a tight ship. We'll see what the current, superintendent does, but I cannot sit here and wholeheartedly say that we have ran a tight ship, lean ship, in terms of, budgetary and fiscal management. So We're just going to have to
Okay.
see again how this new sets of monies that we received is spent and allocated in a fiscally
Okay.
responsible fashion.
It's interesting because right now I've been covering a lot of things on this channel. I think people are paying more attention to local politics more. That's been the sentiment that I've gotten. That my thought is that in some communities, um, people aren't paying a lot of attention to local politics. They kind of just whoever's mayor, whoever's district, superintendent and assessor, whatever. People don't really pay attention that much. People are kind of more paying attention to national elections and maybe state elections. But I think that local politics is so important because I always tell people that's what affects our lives most directly is local politics, the people who are, running the town that you live in. So I think I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this. Now, with East Orange, in and of itself, you've been here a long time. What do you think the challenges are in East Orange currently, that you see? The challenges and or
Oh,
opportunities.
wow. Several things. And I'm going to list them not necessarily in order of priority. The parking, we are busting at the seams. There's population explosion in East Orange, and we're constantly building. You can see what's going up at by Brick Church and other parts of the community. Now we
Hmm.
have a pre-existing shortage of parking spaces. So we have folks who are parking and getting tickets every night. There is really nowhere. I mean, you have some permit parking, but that's a big problem, and we need to address that. There are changes that can be made to allow on-street parking in certain areas. Some parts of town, the streets are very narrow, so I would not necessarily, advocate parking on both sides of the street. But it's certainly something that has to be addressed because it impacts the quality of life. You think about either
Hmm.
monies that have to be paid that has to go towards the parking and not towards your child's daycare fees or grocery or paying towards the rent. We have a problem with that. It also affects quality of life in terms of, you're there waiting for a parking space, no parking. We have stories of folks who can't find a parking spot and they'll end up sleeping for 2, 3 hours to try to see if someone's going to move out and they get a spot. So parking is
Hmm.
a big problem. Secondly, being that I have been so immersed in the education landscape, I can call a spade a spade. We don't have a glowing report card. And if we are to attract folks coming into East Orange who are adding to the tax base, they're expecting, like we
Hmm.
are expecting, sound, solid schools. Now,
Hmm.
when you're looking at a population of students and you have students who are 3 to 4 years behind grade level, you start thinking about what's the cause, what's the root cause. Well, in some instances, not all instances, but clearly that COVID gap still exists, sadly. I mean,
Hmm.
COVID has ravaged businesses, it has ravaged homes, it has ravaged lives, and yes, it has ravaged the learning. Okay, so we have seventh graders now, sixth graders who, they're COVID babies. And some of the foundational skills are still missing. So we have to do something. One of the ideas I had, and I've actually enacted the idea, is a quiz bowl. In growing up, culturally speaking, academia was the number one ticket out of poverty. Academia was the number one to set you on that trajectory to become a contributing citizen. And there is something called
Sure.
Schools Challenge Quiz. It's analogous to what we call Jeopardy in America, but what it does, it
Okay.
elevates education where students are excited about competing. They're excited about competing against their own classmates or their own schools within their own district or schools on the outside. So I'm advocating inter and intra school academic competition. The model that I
Okay.
used, the model that I used in 2019 afforded me to go outside to organizations and had them sponsor the winning team and the runner-up teams. And this is something I really intend to, as a education mayor, an education mayor, is to promote competition, bring in corporations that will fund our students' academic prowess and put it on stage. Something that can
Okay.
be televised and looked forward to by competing schools, parents, and the community alike. We must let our youngsters shine academically. And that I definitely will be a promise I will fulfill.
Now, if I understand that, Narda, that's so. And if I'm making a comparison that doesn't match, just let me know. But it almost sounds like if I likened it to a more televised version of like a debate or a spelling bee per se, just something that would be held at certain places, like a debate, like the debate team or spelling bee, that type of situation.
Exactly. Well, in the initial years, I'd say the first year or two, it would definitely be to hone our students and get them acclimated to that stamina and the pressure. Because ultimately, I want or students to be able to say to, let's say, students in, Chatham or Morris Plains, hey, we're down, we're having a competition, and we should see them sparring on level, whether it's physics, chemistry, AP, bio, whatever it is, that our students are showing that, hey, our school system is sound and solid, and we are, on equal footing in terms of what we're learning, the teachers that we have, and how prepared we are in terms of career readiness.
That's very interesting. I haven't run across any ideas like that in education in general, particularly coming from someone who is, aspiring for the mayor's office. It's typically not something I really see. It's usually, you know, more like, well, the education is one place and they handle that over there, and then we handle town business over here. So that's very. But obviously, as an educator, you bring that skill set and a fresh idea. I find that to be very cool because I think that's what people are looking for is newer and fresher ideas. So that's very
and
interesting.
and not just in the intra school perspective. I want to do something among the wards. You have five
Okay.
wards. Let's go at it, whether it's academics, whether it's a field day for the wards, right? Because again, we're
Hmm.
building community. I mean, we have to reimagine what East Orange can look like. I think for decades we have just sort of had the tax and spend, show up at the polls, um, or we do have a little surplus in the budget, are the streets clean? But there's so much more to East Orange, so much more that we can do for our citizens in East Orange, starting from the youngest, serving the youngest to the oldest. And I don't believe that
Hmm.
we haven't begun to tap the potential of folks in East Orange, whether they be
Yeah.
senior citizens or the young adults or the elementary students. We have yet to tap them and inspire them and motivate them for greatness. So I'm excited about the opportunity to be that model and to spur them on to excellence.
What do you think about what I've noticed since COVID, essentially? Because we purchased right before COVID. We were very fortunate,
Hmm.
so we ended up getting in right in time, right before, a couple months before COVID, actually. And
Hmm.
I also hold a real estate license, so I'm well aware of real estate values and how the market has been, and
Hmm.
how do you feel about the explosion, if you will, of East Orange in the last 5 years or so? Because property values have, in many places around the country, obviously have seen property values explode because of COVID,
Hmm.
and it's also been an interesting dynamic because we have these really high values now, and then rates are really high. So East Orange was a place that I have friends who want to buy now in East Orange and can't really afford to, and wish they were here now. So it's seems to be a community that's has a lot of business in. I know that the Brick Church Station project, I believe, is about a $500 million project. So obviously that, and then other projects being built around here. So it seems like money is coming in, and East Orange is becoming, even more desirable than it was before. But what do you think as far as the taxes?
So, it's funny. This evening coming home, I just pulled over to talk to a lady who was outside tending to her grass. And her concern, like a lot of homeowners, is she's on fixed income, she's a homeowner, and her taxes keep going up. She compares what she paid for taxes 8 years ago and what it is now. Now, you talked about, from your lens, you're seeing this explosion, the building explosion, the real estate explosion. Let's take the Brick Church project. Tax abatement. See, I am for bringing in businesses that bring in dollars that help to alleviate the tax burdens. We cannot continue to bring in businesses and give them 15, 20-year tax abatement, which means they don't pay any taxes. And at the same time, the little people, the homeowners who are on fixed income, are forced to choose and are on the brink of losing their property. So, under my administration, any future housing development, housing stock, has to truly be affordable housing where it's a turnkey. People go in, they pay their taxes, and it adds to the ratables.
Absolutely, and that's straightforward. I mean, now what do you say to people who feel like the only way to attract developers is to give a tax abatement? What do you say to them? Do you feel like there should be no tax abatements, or just limit the tax abatements if you have to give them, as far as the duration?
Very, very, very limited tax abatement. However, bring in a certain good faith amount of dollars that can help to defer the tax burden in the year you're coming in. Because if we are that attractive for you to want to come and set shop up in East Orange, bring some money with you also. Simple as that.
Absolutely,
Help us. You
absolutely.
cannot come in right in, and there's more burden on the water supply. There's more, the parking situation is exacerbated. Bringing in more people and bringing in these high rise, you have to think about what does it really do to the cost of the services that we have to provide.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, now for taxes? Now, no one likes paying taxes, and, and I'm not crazy
Well,
about
that's a sure
it.
thing. Taxes and death, right? Someone says the two things you're sure of in life: taxes and death, right?
Oh,
Okay.
you got that right. You got that right. But now, with property taxes, are they being spent correctly? Are we running a lean government? Would you say a local lean government, or is it bloated? I mean, what do you feel about the current administration?
Okay. So, what I will say is, without getting too much into specifics, there are instances, for example, where if we're paying out and settling lawsuits, and that's all I'll say, money has to come from somewhere. And ultimately, the taxpayers are the ones paying into the city coifer. So, when you talk about malfeasance or misappropriation of funds or misconduct that leads to, payouts and penalties, we have a problem there. When you talk about nepotism,
Okay,
which is very evident, when you're talking about folks who are getting paid, they're not on the job, and other people are getting paid for the same position. And I'm not getting into specifics. And these are facts
sure.
that, if ever pushed, we can always talk about them. But yes, we have a problem. We have a problem of nepotism.
Okay.
We have a problem in our local government right now, and it has to be stopped. It has to stop. This is not what East Orangians have signed up for, and we need clear, transparent, accountable government, and that is not what we have right now. So it is my duty as a concerned, ethical citizen who has resided in East Orange close to 4 decades, to step forward and challenge the status quo. Because time over time, we see, and I'm a Democrat, but we see the machinery
Hmm.
decide who they want to represent our people. We have to wrestle power back and give it to everyone in the street and decide, hey, you decide who you want your council person to be. You decide who you want your mayor to be. Not the Democratic machine showing up every minute and telling you this is who we want, this is who we don't want. That is not
Right.
democracy. And we see right now the biggest parallel that we are so incensed about and so frustrated, and rightly so, what's happening with our federal government here in the United States, where we see the outright unmitigated gall of folks just putting aside the rule of law and just trampling on the Constitution and our democracy. Well, on a granular level, when folks have a party line that, thank God, got broken up back in 2024 when Mr. Kim sued and won. And now you'll see on the ballot where you have my name right in the same bracket with our incumbent. That was a thing of
Hmm.
unheard of a year ago. You know, I was somewhere off in Siberia or any other candidate who wasn't on the party line. So everyone now
Right.
has a decent shot, because we are all housed in the same block. So East Orange clearly, yes, is at a great juncture, has a lot of potential, but we have seen an administration who has had 8 years to herald champion like initiatives. We haven't seen that. Even the housing stocks that are up, they were not innovative ideas birthed out of the current administration. It was a legacy of his predecessor. So when you talk
Hmm.
about what has really happened in 8 years in terms of new innovative ideas, we haven't really
Hmm.
seen anything, and we cannot
Okay.
afford to fritter away the next 4 years under this kind of leadership. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to our seniors. It's unacceptable to our regular city dwellers or students or young adults. It's absolutely unacceptable. And that is why I'm running to become the next leader, true leader, who will innovate, who will inspire, and who will create a truer sense of community in a very collaborative way where everyone wins and everyone is at the table.
That's what it's all about. I mean, and to understand, I think, again, I don't speak for everyone, but I think that, again, many times people are not really aware of what's going on locally because, federally, people can read their headlines and pick whether they want to do Fox News or MSNBC or whatever, and they can kind of pick whatever gang they want to, attach themselves to. And, most of the time people follow narratives, but local government. So sometimes there aren't specific, like, I feel like what happens with people in their local government, it has to be something really bad. It has to be something really glaringly bad, like the school district issue with the budget deficit. That's when people are ready to come out and they're ready to, yell and curse and all these things. So these things. So I say all that to say that now with East Orange, the trajectory that's happened, from my view as an everyday citizen, it seems like it's part of the natural progression of northern New Jersey. Now, it kind of started as far as the real estate aspect of it. To me, it kind of started in Jersey City, and then it kind of spread, and then obviously Newark became, Newark has changed a lot, as everyone knows, and then it seems like it's all of this is a spill off from Newark, the opportunities. So I think that I'm saying that I think people see the progression of this area in general, right? And I think that they may automatically attribute these things to the current mayor. Now, I'm not saying what he hasn't done or has done or hasn't done, but I think that the reason why I think what you're saying is important is for people to understand now what are some natural progressions that are happening and what are some things that are currently a problem that we should look at. Now, with the tax base, what do you see over the next 5 to 10 years if some of these things are not addressed? What do you see some problems down the pike coming.
Well, you don't even have to wait for 5 to 10 years. You're looking at home ownership right now, where folks are, they can hardly pay the increases. You don't have to wait 5 to 10 years to see what's happening in terms
Hmm.
of that. You don't have to wait 5 to 10 years to see what's happening with our report card in our school system. I mean, if you look at the report card, here goes the slope, right? And of course, we talked about the fact of what COVID has done to our average scores, proficiency scores.
Sure.
Unless someone either stops, looks at the city's budget, someone stops, looks at the school's budget, and decide to do serious surgery in terms of wants, needs, I've seen waste. I have seen waste over the years. I have seen waste. And waste is tantamount to, there's a dollar cost attached to
Hmm.
waste. Because the very things that get thrown out, it's replaced. And 3 years later, it's a new program, it's a new set of books. We're talking millions of dollars. Waste. We need to sit down and have a comprehensive view as to what we need our education model to look like and stick with something. You know, there's a running joke. We always say, 3 years, we're going to have a new curriculum, 3 years, new books every 3 years. There's something wrong with that. Because when I was growing up, math was math. You
Right.
teach the standards.
Hmm.
You teach the standards. But this constant every 3 years of newness, and the laughter was always something new again, but we don't see test scores going up. We don't see the results of always
Right.
changing. No, at some point, we do have to bring everyone to the table and say, let's stop the madness. Let's really look and see what is working and what is not working. You can't throw
You know,
money and a budget after everything.
absolutely. It actually makes me think about a point because I was a friend of mine he had founded some education programs, some AI programs for education. And what do you think about the efficiency of some of these things? Are they efficient or?
Let's talk about AI. Okay. So, the ethics of AI. In terms of integrity, one of the things we have to make sure, and I can be transparent about what I see first, from experientially, not what I hear. You have to be careful that our youngsters are trained in the ethics of AI because we do have students who cheat. We do have college students who cheat.
Yeah.
AI is so accessible right now that if we're not careful, we will embrace a generation and generations to come of folks who are steeped in plagiarization. They have challenges writing a first draft by themselves, and they will turn to AI. So AI is pretty good. AI is not the problem. It's how it's used. It's a tool, how it's used. And so we have to really strengthen also the do's and don'ts.
Now, as far as education, obviously you're definitely will be an education mayor, that's for sure. And I think that that's important. It's so important. Now, I guess my question also, and I guess some people may ask, if you were to be elected mayor, how would your life change? How would you make time, and how would that work for you as far as you know, because you're a busy
Well,
person, so.
yeah, well, clearly, I would have to pivot 100% out of education. However, I would definitely be the kind of mayor that would still want to be on the schedule, showing up at the different schools, modeling lessons, doing hands on, and especially being part of a very critical part of creating this whole design of that competition, that quiz bowl that will really, really, I believe, serve as a good shot in the arm for our district in terms of, you know, celebrating smartness, celebrating uh, academic prowess, celebrating our students, and sending them out there to compete among themselves and among other students from different townships. I'm also going to
Right.
say that second that's dear to my heart that I definitely will definitely advocate is entrepreneurialism. I believe our kids, young kids, have talents. I have this little fifth grader. She makes these little bracelets with the rubber bands. And she sold me one right before Christmas. And I go, actually, I'm having an event at the restaurant. Can you make 30 of these? I want to surprise a woman who's having a birthday party. And she's like, I don't think I can make 30, Miss Morant. But anything to spur on, that thirst for entrepreneurialism. I am definitely also
Hmm.
one of those kinds of people that will let that be one of my torches. So between the education and between the youth initiatives and entrepreneurialism.
Entrepreneurialism is everything too, because we don't have enough of it. We don't have enough of it. We have a lot of talk of it, but I do think that kids need to be introduced to it, and understand it more. As well as financial literacy, of course. But um,
Hmm.
now, how do you feel about crime in East Orange?
Yeah,
What is your
when you
stance on crime?
compare, yeah. So I alluded to crime and how riddled we were with the outright gang violence back in the mid 90s, early 90s, up to the mid 90s when I had my first restaurant. We were plagued with a lot of the drugs, the outright drugs and violence. I speak of South Harrison Street, Berwyn Street. I think everybody who lived in East Orange at the time knew about Berwyn. Um, the the crime has on the surface clearly declined. You have a sense of in some areas, not all, because I really don't know the current stats when it comes to the breakdowns of whether it's violent crime, whether it's burglary, all the different kinds of crime. But
Hmm.
there's a palpable need of more policing, patrolling in the city of East Orange. One of the things people talk about is the lack of the patrol cars. They don't see as many patrol. They need a lot more police patrolling parts of East Orange. And I can say I agree with the folks I've been talking to on the street because there was a time I would see a whole lot more patrol vehicles, just police just cruising by, checking out what's going on. You really don't see a lot of that going on these days. Um, I know some of the local businesses, some of the supermarkets, they've had to constantly deal with, stealing, a lot of shoplifting. You know,
Hmm.
that is something that I believe is still ongoing. It might not necessarily be reflected in the data from the police department, but
Right.
we know that is certainly still happening. How they reclassify it or not classify it, you know, that's beyond me. But compared to, I'd say 30 years ago, I would say there is a sharp decline, but are we at that point where the city is crime free and you can go down 3 o'clock in the morning, any part of East Orange, and take a nice stroll and not feel that you have to look over your shoulder? I don't think we're there yet.
I mean, there's always room to grow when it comes to reducing crime. That's
Always.
for sure. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
Now,
And then,
what would you say as far as budgetary concerns? We talked about that. Where do you think? Obviously, we you're the education mayor, so when it comes to teachers, I've always felt like teachers are just not paid enough. They're just not paid enough, and it did hurt. It hurt our heart, as a family, to look at what had happened last year with the budget crisis for the teachers. Now,
mhm.
from a budgetary standpoint, where do you think money needs to go? Is it more money in education? Do we need less? Do we need a slimmer government? Do we need to put more money in police, like we're saying? Where would you where would you go budgetarily, and also just generally, what would you say would be the biggest difference between you and the current mayor now? What are the major things that makes you different?
Well, let's start with the whole element of the intrinsic part of the heart. There's something called empathy. There's something that's called having that natural knack to encourage and to inspire and to be all that you can be for everyone, not just some people, not just the nucleus of friends and family. That sets me apart. I'm for everyone. I'm for including everyone at the table. I don't see myself running around trying to clean up the city because it's election time. That is something I should have cared about a long time, all over my tenure, that I have a clean city for my people. It should not be an election. Oh, let me get on top of this, right? In
Hmm.
terms of our kids have enough basketball courts, right? They do. Do they have a civic center where they can go and say, did any companies call in today to say they have XYZ opportunities available so I can go down and get some kind of training? Because that's exactly where I'm heading. I have been
Hmm.
able to build solid alliances with non for profit organizations. And over my past, 15 years, through one in particular, the Bass Foundation, I've been able to bring in at this point, in terms of services, whether it's food, coats, gifts, laptops, during COVID, sanitizers, masks, over $2 million. I've done resolutions after resolutions, at least 20 to 30 resolutions over the past 15 years to bring in partnership money, to bring in aid. There was one year I was able, through the Ralph Arrington Foundation, able to send 70 students to NJIT's pre-college program for 2 consecutive years. And at those 2 years also, I was able to send 40 youngsters from schools around the district to the Turtleback Zoo for 2 weeks of camp. I mean, I have single
Okay.
handedly, and in some instances, in a very collaborative way, written and got funded programs and initiatives that continue to this day impact the lives of our students and families. Food insecure homes every summer, and to this day we do it every summer out of Messiah Baptist Church's parking lot. I oversee giving food to at least 100 families. Louisville School, I started a program there, and although I'm no longer there, it still has continued in perpetuity. Every holiday season, every child in that school receives holiday gifts. Every fall, every child in that school receives coats. And these are just a few things that I've done and continue to support.
I love it. I love it. People need to know their choices and understand who your mayor is going to be. Who is the mayor, and what does the mayor care? I'm glad you said that, because often you get, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm just talking about politics in general. Usually, you just get someone who's campaigning, and wants the office, but to know who the person actually is, I do appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. Just
You
to
know,
know. And
I want to jump in and say this. One of the things
yes,
that, even as a child growing up, my teachers would say, she is serious. I'm one of the most formidable human beings you'll ever meet in terms of my resolve to do the right thing for the right reasons and at the right time. I'm that kind of fighter. You cannot tell me that it can't be done. And some of the programmings that I alluded to just now, I do them because our community members need the best. So you'll find that I've played liaison with big companies and big foundations and brought the resources back to our community because I believe that being in that gap, standing in the gap, and having access is my sole purpose for doing what I do, to be the bridge to bring the grant monies, the food, the computers, whatever that's needed.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I plan on amplifying that to the 10th degree from the mayor's office, because then you can build more alliances. You have a track record in being able to have the resources come in and it be appropriated in the right way. There are a lot of philanthropic entities out there, a lot of organizations that are willing to partner with our young people and families that are distressed and food insecure. And with the current administration at the federal level, there is no telling how we're going to be affected on the education basis. We've seen lots of cuts. Every day you wake up, you're unsure about what's going to be cut. And so you need a very
Hmm.
strong Teflon kind of personality with a backbone and a resolve and a proven track record that you can fight and that you're not someone's puppet and that you won't bow easily and you won't cave in when the pressure gets tough. That's why I am going to be the next mayor who sets myself apart from the current administration.
Well, there it is. There it is, and that's no, it's great. It's great to hear and great to learn about you. And with all that, I meant to ask you, when did you decide? Was there a moment where you decided I'm going to run for mayor? Was it like a moment, or was it like something over time?
Okay, so I ran for mayor in 2001. And
Okay.
that was, oh, yes. And then in 2005. But in terms of this recent determination and resolve, it happened right when Cochrane Academy was on the chopping block. And we had the then superintendent show up at a staff meeting to explain the nuances of what was going on. And I pretty much asked him, I said, you were at the helm and you've been at the helm and you have visionaries and you have bean counters and you have strategists. Did you not see this coming? I said, everyone's jumping off the Titanic. Where does that leave us? And at the end of the meeting, I said to myself, when is the next mayoral election? And I looked it up and it was 2025. And I said to colleagues, don't forget 2025. And they go, what are you talking about? I said, that's the next mayoral election. I'm going to run. Enough is enough. Yes. So that was the watershed moment recently when I
Hmm.
decided to
Call
run.
to action.
Call to action.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Like David said, is there not a cause? Is there not a cause to rise up and wrestle East Orange out of mediocrity and set it on its right side up and change the trajectory for everyone here? We started the program talking about your love for the city. And I concur because I'm still here after how many years? I could have gone anywhere I wanted, but I'm still here. And I've
Hmm.
um, done successfully in terms of business, starting business here in East Orange and growing and impacting young minds. I have a student right now, I taught his mother. And that's so funny to
Oh,
see,
wow.
second generation. So I've stayed and for good cause. And I want everyone to support my candidacy, not because they like me, but because I am the better candidate with a stronger plan and a vision and a boldness to take on these challenging times that we have and unify and truly unify the community. So on June 10th, a couple weeks from now, June 10th of this year, please go out and vote 1D, D as in David, the David that slew Goliath, 1D. That's where I am, Narda Morant, Democratic candidate for the mayor of City of East Orange. Let's change things now because you deserve better. Thank you.
June 10th, for all you who don't know, if you're not aware, June 10th is election day, 1D, as in David, as Narda said. And I appreciate your time and really, letting people know who you are, this great city of East Orange, and they do have a choice. There's a choice on the ballot, and,
Yes, they
I
do.
appreciate your time letting everybody know that. Is there anything else you want to shout out, promote? talk about before we close out the interview?
What I'd like to say in closing, for those who are listening and those who will listen and spread the good news, I want to say that your vote is as precious as gold, as precious. It's an investment, it's currency. And we have the young ones, the young minds that we have to think about. Your vote is just not yours to fritter away or not use it wisely. So, this election, be very prayerful and intentional about how you invest your vote and who you invest that vote in. Because at the end of the day, when everyone makes an investment, you are looking for an ROI and return on investment. And we have seen that there's really no return on investment for the past 8 years. So let's change the trajectory. Let's turn the page and get a new administration in, and I'll be at the helm to lead us all into better days in East Orange. Thank you.